The big problem is the protocol for the unionist community, because it means a whole host of goods are not available in Northern Ireland that should be and are available in the rest of Great Britain. And firstly, I should say that when it was written, I honestly don't think the people behind writing it thought it would have the ramifications that it had.
Well, let's take a look at that. This is the European Union Withdrawal Agreement Bill Impact Assessment dated 21st of October 2019. It contains the government's own expectations at the time the Brexit deal was done of the border checks required within the United Kingdom in the Irish Sea as a result of the Prime Minister's deal. Paragraph 4.5.1 Customs states, any processes normally required on goods entering the EU will be implemented at the Northern Ireland rest of world border or on trade moving east-west between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Subparagraph 262 says, as agri-food goods enter Northern Ireland from Great Britain, they would do so via a border inspection post or designated point of entry as required by EU law. There will be additional documentation required on all agri-food goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland to ensure that they comply with the necessary regulations. These could include export health certificates for products of animal origin, fish and live animals, and phytosanitary certificates for plants. This would result in an additional administrative cost to businesses moving goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The protocol will require additional checks covering all products subject to SPS provisions to ensure compliance with the single market's SPS regulations. Businesses in Great Britain placing goods on the market in Northern Ireland will need to ensure they are complying with the relevant EU rules and could be subject to risk-based checks at the boundary of the regulatory zone. This was further corroborated by the internal leak of this HMT document 2 months later, from which it's clear that Theresa May's Brexit deal for unfettered access was no longer guaranteed in Johnson's deal. This leaked Treasury presentation in 2019 goes on to say checks and declarations from the protocol would be highly disruptive to the Northern Ireland economy, that SMEs are likely to struggle to bear the cost, and acknowledges that it would increase the price of high street goods. In December 2019, the BBC reported on leaked documents raising fresh concerns about GB-NI trade after Brexit. The paper from the Department for Exiting the EU, seen by the BBC, lists preparing for high levels of checks as one of the challenges in delivering the government's Brexit deal. It gets worse.
We had to take the decisions we did back in 2019 because Parliament had removed the option of leaving without a deal. The Constitution was being shredded. We had to deliver the referendum result. We thought that it would work. We knew we were taking a risk. There was a lot in it we didn't want but was imposed on us.
In 2019, then Prime Minister Boris Johnson agreed his oven-ready Brexit deal with the EU and gave Parliament this assurance.
It is in full compatibility, Mr. Speaker, with the Good Friday Agreement.
Now the UK government says the current situation is fundamentally undermining the Good Friday Agreement.
We've got a border erected down the middle of our country, a border which applies checks, applies costs, applies extra bureaucracy.
In July 2019, Johnson had made this promise.
Under no circumstances, whatever happens, will I allow the EU or anyone else to create any kind of division down the Irish Sea.
2 months later, he agreed to checks in the Irish Sea.
The Brexit deal assumed that Britain would put checks on some goods moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
The net result of which is that there's pretty much a border in the Irish Sea.
As part of his deal with the EU, Northern Ireland stayed in the EU's single market for goods, and there would be checks on those goods arriving in Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. Despite agreeing a deal he knew would require checks, Johnson shamelessly continued to tell the public this.
This document is talking about checks both ways.
And that's wrong, because there won't be checks.
So you're saying that this is wrong, the government's own impact assessment is wrong, your Brexit secretary is wrong, all these people are wrong, and you're right?
Yes, because there's no question of there being checks on goods going NIGB or GBNI.
They should believe exactly what I say, which is there will be no checks on goods going from GB to NI, from NI to GB.
It continues to get worse.
Johnson did tell me personally that he after agreeing to the protocol, he would sign up to changing that protocol and indeed tearing it up.
If correct, it would suggest Johnson went to the country in the December 2019 general election with an oven-ready Brexit deal which he believed needed to be torn apart.